Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Careers in Law. We're really excited to see so many of you here. My name is Simone Sevier, and I'm an attorney in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to BYU Law School and I went to the University of Chicago for my undergrad. And I currently practice corporate law. I do primarily mergers and acquisitions and some private equity and venture capital transactions. And today we are here to connect as women in the law. We're also members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And today's event is a joint event hosted by both the LDS Women in Law Association and the JRCLS Women in Law Committee. And I'm grateful to be a board member of both organizations. So before we get started into the panel discussion, and we'll talk more about the rest of the event, I wanted to just jump into explaining what is the LDS Women in Law Association and what is JRCLS, so you can become familiar with both. So I'm going to kick it off to Katie Stevenson, who's the president of the LDS Women in Law Association. So go ahead, Katie.
Thanks so much, Simone, and thank you everyone for joining. It's so wonderful to have us all together. The LDS Women in Law Association is just meant to be basically a constellation of connection between pre-law students who are interested in law school, current law students, and then women who are attorneys, all of whom are practicing members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have a pretty active social media where we post interviews and stories with women who've gone to all sorts of schools and done all sorts of things and have all sorts of backgrounds. And that's really our goal, is to create those kind of connections and for everyone to be able to find someone to connect with, to answer their questions, to help them make networking choices and career choices. And really, so we all feel less alone on this journey, which can be sort of a unique journey to be a practicing attorney and to be an active member of the church. And a woman, but we want to make sure that all those parts of us are seen and valued. And so we also do quarterly virtual events and hope to do in-person events soon. So that's a little bit about LDS Women in Law.
Thank you, Katie. Let's turn it over to Candace Anderson, who is one of our speakers today and who is the chair of the JRCLS Women in Law Committee. So Candace, tell us about JRCLS.
I will. And JRCLS, while it has the same name as BYU's law school, is technically separate from the law school. And their mission really goes beyond just members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Their mission really is pretty clear. It just is we affirm the strength brought to the law by a lawyer's personal religious conviction. We strive through public service and professional excellence to promote fairness and virtue founded upon the rule of law. And so we often have speakers, we have even members of the JRCLS Society, the International Society, from all over the world, many of which are not members of our church. And so that's an interesting, probably half of our membership in the Law Society did not attend BYU's law school. A lot did, but certainly it's not a requirement. And we really value the perspective brought by people who attended different law schools and had that different experience. And within the International J. Reuben Clark Law Society, there is a Women in Law Committee, and it continues to evolve. And even as I pulled up the old mission statement of it, I thought, we may want to improve on it a little bit more. But essentially, it's besides encouraging participation by women lawyers in local and international law society sections, we really want to facilitate communication among women lawyers. We want to promote fairness and equal opportunities for all law society women lawyers. And so we really focus with what can we do with our International Law Society that will really promote those values. We have been doing similar to the wonderful organization Katie talked about. We've been doing a few virtual events. It's been very conducive to bringing us all together from all over the world. But we do also each year in October, we do at an annual training meeting, we typically have a Women in Law evening where we bring in a speaker and speak to women law students at BYU, as well as young women who are thinking about going to law school, whether it's at BYU or some other place as well. And as we have our conferences, the J. Reuben Clark Law Society, just 2 weeks ago, we were gathered in Atlanta and had some amazing speakers, really topics including the civil rights movement, hearing from Martin Luther King III, the president of the NAACP out of Texas, some wonderful, wonderful discussions. And at that, we had a women in law discussion as part of a panel discussion at our breakfast about diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And it's something that we want to continue to pursue. And it's something that the J. Reuben Clark Law Society is really focusing on. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Candace. That was perfect. So for today's event, we're going to start off with a panel discussion, and we're going to start off by introducing our panel speakers. And then after the panel discussion, we're going to move into breakout rooms. And so as you all know, you filled out a form when you registered for the event and indicated which areas of law you currently practice in or are interested in. And so we've pre-assigned you to a first set of breakout rooms based on those practice areas. And then we'll, after that first breakout room, get to choose whichever group we want to hop into after that. And we'll get to that point once we conclude the first portion with the panel discussion. So first, I'm excited for you to meet our panelists. And I also wanted to acknowledge and echo Rana's comment in the chat. We would love to see your faces tonight throughout the event. So if you are in a place where you can turn on your video, please don't feel like you need to look a certain way. We invite you as you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. But if you are in a place where you can turn on your camera, we invite you to, and we want to engage with you face-to-face if possible. So we have a fabulous panel of speakers, which I am really grateful to. Each of them are members of the board of the JRCLS Women in Law Committee. So let's hear about our speakers. We're going to start with Rana, who's going to be presented by Katie. And Katie, could you also just say your own practice area if you haven't already? I know you also mentioned your location. You're in California, so go ahead, Katie.
Definitely. So I'm currently a litigation associate at O'Melveny & Myers in Los Angeles. And here is Rana's bio, which is fabulous. Rana Leonard is a teaching professor of law at the University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Law, where she's taught for the past 14 years. She teaches or has taught courses on human rights law, international law, comparative law, Spanish for lawyers, and professional responsibility. She also teaches a foundational course and capstone project for the International Masters of Law students. Her human rights experiences are diverse, including being the former legal advisor for the program on freedom of religion and belief at the ACLU, being a researcher for the Human Rights Institute at Columbia University and for the Oslo Coalition on Freedom of Religion and Belief, presenting on asylum issues over the past several years, interviewing inmates convicted as juveniles without the possibility of parole, and creating a domestic violence program with a Bosnian NGO. Rana earned her BA in journalism and French from BYU, her JD from BYU Law School, and her LLM in international human rights and comparative law from Columbia Law School. Prior to becoming a professor, she was an associate at Ballard, Spahr, Andrews, and Ingersoll for a short stint before accepting a clerkship with Judge Terrence L. O'Brien on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. All right. Let's hear from Annie Counts, who will be introducing Jenny Wilson. And Annie, go ahead and say hello and where you're from and what you practice as well, if you would.
Sure. Well, my name is Annie Counts. I'm an estate and tax planning attorney practicing in Fort Worth, Texas. It's the little sister city to Dallas. I love it, but we're not here for that today. It is my pleasure to introduce Miss Jennifer or Jenny Wilson. Jenny is a senior gift planning specialist for the Philanthropies and Gift Planning Services Division of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where she offers legal and technical support to donors who wish to make gifts to the church. Prior to her current role, Jenny was a partner at Bohm, Wildish, and Matson, a boutique law firm in Orange County, California, practicing estate planning, asset protection, and comprehensive wealth management. Jenny has a passion for assisting others in the protection of their most important assets. She is also a board member of Rising Star Outreach, a nonprofit organization dedicated to eradicating the effects of leprosy in India. Outside of work and volunteer activities, Jenny spends most of her time with her husband, 5 children, and 16 grandchildren. Jenny received her BA in English from BYU and her JD from BYU Law School.
Thank you, Annie. All right. Abby Pace, are you on the call? I think I saw you driving earlier and I want to make sure you're available to, okay.
I am. I apologize for being in the car. President Biden is speaking in Las Vegas, and so my normal route home has been, diverted. But I am here, and I'm here to participate. So let me introduce you.
Thank you, Abby.
Oh, no problem. I promise I'm being safe. So I'm here to introduce Susanna Thomas. Susanna Thomas has been an attorney for the Department of the Interior Office of the Solicitor in its Salt Lake City, Utah office. She's worked there for 20 years, and she specializes in federal water rights, federal land acquisitions and disposals, compliance with NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, and the Endangered Species Act. She advises agencies on water law and environmental law matters and other land and water issues in both transactional and litigation contexts. Susanna is assigned to represent the Bureau of Reclamation, Upper Colorado region, which encompasses all or part of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. She also represents the Utah Reclamation Mitigation and Conservation Commission and the Central Utah Project Completion Act office. In addition to her work with the Department of Interior, Susanna has taught water law as an adjunct professor at BYU Law for the past 14 years. Susanna earned her BA in American Studies at BYU and her JD from BYU Law School.
Thank you, Abby, and safe travels home, be safe. Awesome. Okay, I am going to introduce our next panelist speaker, who is Annette Jarvis. Annette had already planned travel this week, and so she's currently in Israel, which is 3 a.m., and so she couldn't join us live. So she graciously sent us her remarks in advance, and so I'm going to introduce her as her panelist and share her remarks on her behalf throughout the event. But I'm excited to introduce you to her because she is a phenomenal woman. So Annette Jarvis is the co-managing shareholder of the Salt Lake City office of Greenberg Traurig, the AM 100 world-renowned law firm. Annette has practiced corporate bankruptcy and restructuring law for over 35 years and has extensive experience in representing banks, financial institutions, debtors, and other parties in Chapter 11 and Chapter 15 bankruptcy cases throughout the country. She is a frequent lecturer and published author on bankruptcy and insolvency law, and has testified as an expert witness in several cases, including a high-profile international case. She has been the recipient of countless awards and accolades for her work and her community and mentoring efforts, including being listed the best lawyers in America for 18 consecutive years and counting, being named the Distinguished Lawyer of the Year by the Federal Bar Association, Lawyer of the Year by the Utah State Bar, and receiving the Women Lawyers of Utah Mentoring Award. Annette also has been serving on the Board of Trustees for the Utah Symphony, Utah Opera for the past 13 years, and on the board of the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art for the past 4 years. Annette is a graduate of BYU, where she studied history and European studies, and of BYU Law School, where she has been recognized as a distinguished alumni of the year. She is married to Dr. Joseph Jarvis and is the mother of 5 children and the grandmother of 9 grandchildren. She has too many interests and hobbies to mention, but having never considered herself to be funny, she is enjoying having finally found an audience, her grandchildren, who appreciate her sense of humor. So that is Annette Jarvis, and I'm excited to hear her remarks today as well. We're going to turn the time back over to Katie to introduce our last speaker. Go ahead, Katie.
Great. So I get to introduce Candace Anderson. Candace Anderson has been the elected District 2 supervisor for Contra Costa County, California for the past 11 years, where she sits on 29 local and regional boards and commissions addressing planning and land use, transportation, pensions, mental health, healthcare, reuse and recycling, economic development, and public safety. Prior to her current role, Candace was the mayor of Danville, California for 2 terms and sat on the Danville Town Council for 9 years. Candace received her BA in public policy from BYU and her JD from BYU Law School and is a proud native of Honolulu, Hawaii, where she began her legal career as a prosecuting attorney. Candace and her husband have been married for 38 years and are the parents of 6 children and 9 grandchildren.
Wow. Well, I hope you all are as excited as I am after hearing those bios to learn from these incredibly accomplished women. So let's get started. My first question for you panelists is, what is your favorite aspect about your practice area and why? And I want to first hear from Susanna. Tell us about water law and everything that you do. That is something that I am not very familiar with, and I really want to hear from you about what you love about it. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for that really kind introduction. Appreciate that. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, my computer was being a little wonky earlier tonight, so I'm glad it finally calmed down. So yeah, so I was really interested in doing natural resources as young as, I don't know, junior high. I was on student council on the beautification committee, and everyone's like, oh, this is what you're going to do for your life. So in a way that happened. So I was taking all the different natural resource and environment classes I could find at BYU. And one of my friends who was a year ahead of me said, oh, you need to take this water law class. I'm like, okay. So I took it, and in my introduction, it mentioned I was an American Studies major as an undergrad, and water law turns out to be all about the history of the settlement of the West and all the laws that follow the different conflicts that happen. And so it was just a beautiful marriage of history and law together, and I was hooked. So I landed an internship in the office I'm currently in now. Did not get to do one single thing in water law, but did give me an opportunity to see what federal government work might be like. And then, I don't know, divine intervention, something happened, and a position opened up about the time I was graduating from law school that was particularly to represent these water agencies. And I applied, and 15 months later, because that's the way of the government, I got this job. So this has been my first and my only job since graduating law school. And so anyway, it's been wonderful because, you know, you don't get to do this very much in law school. They want you to kind of learn things on your own, but we do so much collaboration. I work with scientists, I work with hydrologists, economists, everybody from so many different walks of life that all bring their specialties to the table. And we bring all of that and we work out projects, and some take decades, some take a year, some in between. But it's just so exciting for each of us to bring our areas of expertise together and collaborate in a really professional way. And we find friends that way too. And I really love the friendships that I have developed over the many years. So that's just one of my favorite parts of my job. And I wish there was a little bit more opportunity for you to do that in law school, but I also understand that professors want you to learn the things that you're doing, but I do want you to know the real world, there's a lot of collaboration, and it's really exciting. So that's what I love.
I love that. Thank you, Susanna. And I feel like you said, it was kind of meant to be your in your story. And the fact that you stayed there for the last 20 years, you never changed jobs, I think that really shows how much you love it. I feel like so many of us get out of law school. I was like this, and I was like, still like, wait, am I sure? Do I want to do this? And so I loved hearing that. Okay, Rana, I want to hear from you because you have a really unique career story. Tell us about being a professor of law and what you love about it.
All right, so I guess for me, it's not just being a professor, it's the topic also. So I was a journalist before I went to law school, and I was in Egypt on a journalism exchange. And that's where I had this understanding that women are treated so differently in other countries. We have a long way to go to improve opportunities and equality and things for women in the United States. But in Egypt, it was just so depressing and dire. And in fact, when I was there, there was a woman who was killed by her family because autopsy revealed that she was pregnant and she wasn't married. And this is called a so-called honor crime. And I just, I don't know, that just hit me so hard that, that I needed, like I had this calling to understand women's rights better and human rights in general, and to promote them. So I went to law school specifically with that in mind. And to be able to work in the human rights field, it's incredibly hard. In law school, in fact, at BYU, there wasn't even a single course on human rights. Is there now, Susanna?
If there is, it would be taught by KIF, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there was.
Was there?
I think there was.
She taught
If anyone else.
Sometimes she would teach public international law, and she would teach a women's studies course. But when I was there was never an international or any human rights course. So I kind of created my own things when I was in law school and wrote my papers on the topics that I was interested in and all of that, and was able to my first summer find an internship at the Department of State in the President's Interagency Council on Women, and did FGM stuff and honor killings research, and wrote Q&As for then Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and because I was the only person who had done any research on that. So anyway, so that kind of took me, and I was very committed to my topic, right, to human rights. A lot of people go to law school and they're not sure and they change, and I just knew that was it for me. And I ended up having great opportunities while in law school to work with one of the NGOs that was around at the time that was associated with the law school, and went to UN conferences and pre-conferences in Geneva and in South Africa, New York. And so just opportunities that I wouldn't have had elsewhere, I think. But it's kind of like what Susanna said, I think sometimes there's divine intervention, and to be able to find any opening in academia is incredibly hard. And I mean, I was a really good student. I did really well in law school, clerkship, yada, yada. But to have an opening in academia, it's really hard. And we were living in DC, and for my husband, his family had moved here. His dad was retiring, going on a mission. And so there's all this pressure for us to come back to Kansas City. I'm like, my life is over. I'll never be able to teach you or do anything with human rights. And I fought it for a while, but we ended up coming a year later. And then it just opened up that one of the professors went and did a Fulbright in Russia. So he needed somebody to teach his Masters of Law students. And then after I did that and they loved me, then the professor teaching international law and human rights and things accepted a job last minute in Australia. And so they needed somebody, and I was there. And then I had to kind of fight to create my position and things. And that was really divine intervention. And then for it to be all the subjects that I'm passionate about, that's unheard of. So that's what I love about my job, about being a professor, is I get to teach the things I'm passionate about, and I get to inspire this rising generation to understand the importance of rights, the importance of human dignity, and international law and our place in it, and all these kind of things. I love working with students most of the time. I love collaborating, as Susanna mentioned, with colleagues. I do a collaboration with colleagues in Brazil, and we do this collaboration with my human rights students and their students, and we focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and I went down to do a little teaching there. And so just collaboration in ways that it's just amazing. I've gotten to teach in China, I've gotten to teach in Turkey, and I'm going to France and the Netherlands over spring break because I'm presenting, teaching at one of the colleges there. And yeah, just opportunities that, anyway, that I love. And it's all within my area of international law and human rights, and working with my international Masters of Law students. And I guess the last thing I would say, it's flexibility, because as I'm listening to different people, with their 5 children and 6 children, I just have 3 children. But I mean, I started teaching when I started teaching to begin with part-time, and my youngest was a year old. And to be able to, and all the responsibility fell on me, and to be able to have colleagues that were really supportive and flexible with my schedule, and always made sure that the schedule worked for me and let me set the hours that I needed and I wanted. And just that flexibility really made it so that I felt like I was a success at home with my children, and that I was being successful in my career too.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like you're in the ideal position. You get to travel the world and do everything that you love to do. And that's, I feel like, my goal too. So I love that. Thanks for sharing, Rana. All right, let's hear from Candace. Candace, tell us about your current role. I know you were also mayor of Danville. Tell us why you do what you do. What gets you up in the morning every day? And yes, tell us.
Well, it's the fulfillment from helping others. And it's one of those things where what I love about my job is I'm solving problems, and I'm really able to look around me and say, what do we need to do that we can make this world a little bit better, whether it be planning, land use issues, transportation, improving safety. And then on the county level in California, you're the safety net. And that's where I get to address things like homeless services and how do we help prevent people from cycling repeatedly through our homeless shelters, or even worse, through our jails. And how do we provide mental health services in a world where you can't say to someone anymore, we're going to hospitalize you for your own good, or we're going to permanently house you somewhere for your own good. But people have to make those decisions. And how do you create a system of care where you can provide the services needed to really help them come out of this vicious cycle that they are on. Like others, it's been a wonderful way to create a network of community, of colleagues, friends, people who are also similarly working in the community, whether they are an elected official, whether they run a CBO, community-based organization. And it helped me realize very early on, because I did begin my career in politics, so to speak, actually, when my youngest was, well, my youngest 2 weren't born, but my 4 youngest were ages 0, 2, 4, and 6 when I got appointed to a city commission in Santa Clara County and Morgan Hill, then later appointed to a city council. But the flexibility for me has been tremendous. And when you're the mayor of a smaller city, Danville that I represent has a population of about 43,000 people, it's something that's very conducive to raising a family. And I made it very clear to the city staff that, hey, between the hours of 3 and 6, that's my time where I really want to be home when my children walk in the door. I want to find out what they're doing, what they're experiencing. Even if they don't talk to me, they know I'm there and we can have that communication. And then as my children got older and my youngest 2 were in high school, that's where I ran for county supervisor, and taken that position just over 10 years ago. And that was a time where then I could be all in. I still need to make time for my husband, and certainly I carve out time for my grandchildren because that's so important. But it's something that worked very, very well with my family. And I had much more control over my schedule, over my time, but I got to use my law degree. I got to use my degree in public policy to really help accomplish some very important things in our community.
Thank you for sharing, Candace. First of all, I love your background. And I love how everything you do is about serving others. I feel like each of you have kind of shared that theme. It's about using your law degree as a service degree. So thank you for sharing. Okay, Jenny, I'm excited to hear from you as well, because I know you recently started a new role and I want to hear about that. But please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about what you love about your practice area and why.
Sure. So I was kind of like Susanna. I went to law school not knowing what I wanted to do, but it was when I hit that wills and trusts class but something like struck a chord. I loved the old English common law. I love the rule against perpetuities. I love trusts for some reason. I still love trusts. I don't even know why, but I kind of tucked that away. And then after law school, I stayed home with my children for a long time. And when they started to get old enough to be more on their own is when I started thinking about really being a lawyer. And it was that sort of spark that came back to me, like, trying to figure out what kind of lawyer, can I be a lawyer and what kind of lawyer? And really thought, I want to be an estate planner. And so that's what I went after. And that's what I got to do. And it wasn't so easy to get there, but I've been so grateful for that career path. I love the fact that when you're an estate planner, you get to just be on the front lines of helping people figure out what they want, figure out how to get their houses in order, basically. And really, when it's done right, to really strengthen family ties and to work through generations. And you get to be with them, whether it's helping them plan when they're young or planning for after they're gone, or dealing with somebody that's deceased in a trust administration and working with their family, helping them sort that through. There's so many beautiful parts about it. And that's what I've really loved about doing estate planning. My recent role is I transitioned from just, working as a lawyer, basically, to working as kind of like a lawyer with the church. And the nice thing about it is I get to work with people who want to give, who are philanthropists, who over and above what they might already be giving, would like to make a gift, and generally a planned gift, to the church or one of its entities. So I get to work with the church schools and just so many great people. So it's been a fun transition. I still get to use legal skills, but I'm not also facing some of the downsides or the unpleasant sides of a law practice, like billable hours. And so it's been a good transition for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jenny. I have to say, I think you're the first person I've ever met that said they love the rule against perpetuities. If you're in law school, if anyone here is in law school or went to law school, we all know what that is. And it's definitely a tough concept to grasp. So I love that. You love that. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, I want to read what Annette shared about why she loves her practice area, which is bankruptcy and restructuring. And it said that she loves practicing business bankruptcy law. It's a unique combination of both transactional and litigation work, and requires a lot of strategy and creativity to find solutions to difficult, critical business problems. It's fast-paced with multiple parties involved, as most businesses in financial trouble have a limited time in which to find solutions for problems that involve many competing constituencies. You learn a lot about different industries and how they operate, and every case is different. The practice is very business focused, and I love working with business and financial experts to combine our different skills to find pathways forward to pay creditors and save businesses. This is a complex area of law with probably more circuit splits than most any other practice area. I personally created 2 circuit splits myself, with 1 or more Supreme Court arguments heard every year on bankruptcy topics as a result of these circuit splits. It is also an area where the high-level national practitioners group is fairly small. So I love the fact that I have made good friends that I see over and over again in cases where we either work on the same side or on opposite sides, and at times civilly disagree with each other as we vigorously represent our clients. Thank you, Annette, for that. I love how she said that she highlighted the great friends that she's made. I feel like that was another common theme among all of you, the close relationships that you've made with your students, your colleagues in your career. So I want to take it back to when you were in law school. So think back of when you were in law school. I want to hear about if you could change one thing when you were in law school, what would it be? If you could do one thing differently, now that you've had your careers and you know what you know and you've had your experiences, if you go back to law school, what's one thing that you would do differently? Rana, I want to hear from you first.
Mine will be short because last time I was long. Actually, I don't think I would do much differently. The one thing is I don't know why I thought this, but I thought that it was kind of like cheating or unfair to go and ask professors questions. And so I didn't. I thought like we had to figure it all out on our own. And I guess that would be my one thing. And I tell my students that all the time, like you can come and ask questions. And if I ever feel like I'm giving a student more information than somebody else, then I'll just send an email to share it with everybody to make it fair. But that's the one thing is that if you're in law school or you're planning to go to law school, don't be afraid to talk and ask questions of the professors and reach out to them. And, you know, if they don't want to talk with you, they'll let you know. But yeah, they're approachable. So use them and make those relationships.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, for sure. Thank you. Candace, what about you? What would you do differently if you could go back to law school?
And I had to think really hard. I really loved law school. And my husband, who also went to law school, hated it. I just loved it. The one thing I wish I could do differently is I started law school in 1982, and computers were just coming out at the time. And so I did not even have a Selectric typewriter, which means an auto erase typewriter. I wished I had a better auto erase typewriter, or that I had one of the original prototype computers, because that really was challenging when I look at retrospectively. You know, 1985, I got my first PC. The one thing though I will recommend for anyone going to law school is I don't like stress. I've never liked stress. And so the beginning of every semester, I would read ahead one day in all of my classes. And so I was always one day ahead. And then if a party came up or a date, this was before I married my husband, when I was still dating, I could go off and do something fun and I wouldn't be behind. I would just catch up the next day. But by staying one day ahead, it worked really, really well. So that's my advice. Do that, stay organized. Yeah, do your outlines. But when my son went to law school, what I loved about him is as he took outlines, of course, on a laptop, he only wrote down what the professor talked about that day in class. And he felt the readings were important, but what was more important for the exams was exactly what the professor talked about. So those are my tips, but go to law school. It's fun. It gives you a great foundation for everything.
Thank you, Candace. I definitely agree with that as well. I feel like that was one of my goals every semester, to finish all the reading. So I commend you for that, being always ahead of the plan. So, all right, let's hear from Susanna. Tell us about what you learned from law school and what you would have done differently.
Thanks. I would have done a lot of things in my first year differently. I think I figured out something second and third year better, but I didn't have a job first year. They kind of discouraged that. I was single then, single now, so no kids or anything. So I pretty much went to school at 7 or 8 a.m., studied, went to classes, and then went home at midnight and did that every day. And that worked well for the first semester of first year, but it did not do any good for me second semester. I pretty much crashed out and burned out mentally in every possible way. It was awful. I was kind of forced into finding a little bit better balance second and third year. And if I could have gone back to first year, that's what I would have done. And, you know, I second and third years, I was doing co-curriculars and, you know, like on the journals, and then extracurriculars. I was taking yoga classes, and my sisters were undergrads. And so I audited one religion class with them every semester so I could just get off the law school property for a minute. And I was in the Young Women's presidency in my ward. So it came to the point where I'm like, I've got 1 hour to do this, 3 hours to do this. And I was so much more focused and finding that balance better. So if I could go back to my first year, I would have set some time limits. I wouldn't have studied from 8 in the morning till midnight and not gotten any sleep. I would have read a book that was not a law book. I'm a runner now, but I was taking yoga. I was doing water aerobics back then. So I would have been more intentional about, you know, setting that time aside to do that, and keeping that time pretty sacred, because I was very good about that second and third year. And so I can't tell you how to study. I can't tell you anything else, but I would just say, you know, give yourself breaks and get out of the building and get out of your head and your law studies for periods of time during the day. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Susanna. Yeah, that can be tough. I feel like in law school, there's always something to do. So when you sit down and take a break, there's just always something on your to-do list. So that's a crucial lesson. Thanks. Let's see, Jenny, you haven't shared yet, right?
No,
Okay.
I'm happy to share. Thinking about this was a little hard because I absolutely love law school also. Candace, I think graduated a year before me from law school. And when we were there, it was just 1/5 women. And I really enjoyed that place. If I could change one thing though, I think it has to do with a little subversive attitude in the back of my mind. I think, my dad encouraged me to go to law school, encouraged all of us in our family who are women to have something in case we needed to, support ourselves. So I had that in mind when I went to law school. But I think in the back of my mind, I never really expected to really be a full-fledged lawyer. I loved law school. I loved learning. But I let my husband go off to big law. Katie, my husband started at O'Melveny in Los Angeles as well. And, and back in the day, it was harder to figure out as a woman how to have a career, especially when your husband was gone all the time. So I took a step back. And I think if I started now, and I'm assuming that for you younger women, it's not the same as it was sort of for me, but I wouldn't have that attitude that I was going to be, probably supported and probably wouldn't need to work. I think I'd just try to go full bore and say, I am going to be a lawyer and see where this takes me. And, just be a little more intentional that way. Everything else about it, I loved. That was probably one of the my most favorite times of my life. But after law school, it kind of came to a halt because I wasn't really intending so much to practice.
Thank you, Jenny. I didn't know that you and Candace were in the same, not the same class, but they're at the same time. That's really cool. And that actually really ties into Annette's answer to this question as well. If she could go back to law school and do one thing differently, she said, I would have more confidence in myself and recognizing that I am well suited for this profession. I now know that I have both grit and a growth mentality, 2 traits that the ABA study on women said were most important for women to succeed in our profession. I didn't know that then. I was quiet and shy in law school. I never thought I could litigate or stand up in front of large groups of people, and I tried not to stand out in class. As a first-generation lawyer, I really felt out of place in law school and only spoke up when I was required to do so. I ended up practicing business bankruptcy law, not because it was my choice, but because it was the only opportunity given to me, and one that surprisingly I learned to love. So make the most of law school, learn areas of law that are interesting, take some risks, speak up and be heard. You have something important to add to any discussion. Remember that. And I agree. I definitely agreed to that. All right. So moving into your careers in the law, I want to hear from you on the most important lessons you've learned from your career in the law. And I know one of the other discussion topics talked about the influence that faith has made on your career in the law. And so maybe an important lesson in your career in the law involves something with your faith or being a member of the church. But I want to hear about your career, within your career experiences. What do you feel is your motto, or just something that really is the most important thing that you live by and work by?
Yeah. So are we going to do both of those questions, or are you going to touch on that other one later?
I think if we could combine these 2 questions, that would be great, because I know we are a little behind schedule.
Yeah. Okay, sure. That sounds good. So I think we've all kind of talked about this in our various answers in both, well, especially the first question. But something that's just been really, really important for me to remember, and it's been just kind of important for me just personally too, is just that we're it's about people. I work with a lot of contracts, a lot of agreements, do a lot of negotiations, and even in the litigation that I do, which is a little bit, not much, but there's always people behind every single one of those documents. And it can be hard to remember that sometimes because it's just a piece of paper with a lot of words. And especially in the water world, like water is so important to everybody, and emotions can run high. And so I have been in situations where, despite my best efforts, I probably haven't been at my best, maybe just tired and a lot of stress. And likewise, I've been on the other end of that, where people have talked to me in ways that maybe weren't so kind. And in the moment, you just, you get frustrated, but, when tempers, simmer and everyone's taking a beat, I think we just remember that we're just human beings on this planet, like trying to do the best we can. And I feel like with the time I've had in my career, I've really been able to take that to heart and just kind of chill a little bit when things are getting hard, and just remember that everybody matters, and everybody's, we're all children of our heavenly parents. And that's part of the faith side of this, like everybody, and we come as fallen, we're fallen, like we have our problems. And I think just kind of trying to cut people slack a little bit, not necessarily like, there's consequences for different actions, but just be like, what, it was a hard moment. And to just remember that. So that's something that has been really important to me. I'm going to just pivot just a bit on the faith question, although I talked about that a little bit, but I do want to talk about that. I mentioned that getting my job felt like a little bit of a divine intervention of God getting into the mix. I did everything I could to prepare for this. And then the opportunity came up, and I remember I got a blessing from my dad. Well, he wasn't actually in the country when I started my job, but after he got home, I got a blessing from my dad, just to kind of, like, we always got school blessings every year at the beginning of school. So I kind of asked him if he could give me a beginning of my job blessing. And it really felt so strongly to me that this is where I needed to be. And it was important for just my development here on earth, and just, the learning and growth that we have here during this time of probation. And that part of this was this career in law, and that this is where God wanted me to be. And I felt that in a way it was kind of consecrated, when I think about the law of consecration, how we give our time and our talents, I think about that with my career. And I try to, say that prayer every morning to just consecrate my time and my law career to God, that I can do the best I can. I will make mistakes, but, and to use the time in the best way I can, to have the integrity that I hold so dear, in my practice. And so I really do feel like it's a consecrated career, that he wants me to be here to, help people, and to, build the kingdom in whatever way I can, both temporally and spiritually, in every way possible. So there's my answers for you.
Thank you, Susanna. That was very beautifully said. Let's hear from Rana.
All right, so I would like to say, by the way, Susanna and I went to law school together. We were in the same class. We were in the same small group section. I think our first year, we had every single class together our first year.
Yeah.
So I have to say, Susanna is a wonderful person, and her consecrating, her time to God. I mean, even in law school, I have to say we had a great class. Like, some people say, like, it's so competitive. I felt like our class was always willing to help each other. And I think that's kind of affected us also, I think, in our lives and in our careers. So kind of what I'm going to build on what Susanna was saying with the consecratedness. So as I mentioned, I was a journalist before I went to law school. And I remember feeling like there was something else for me, and like thinking, well, maybe I'll go and travel the world and do travel articles, and that didn't feel right. And I thought, well, I love languages and French, and I thought maybe I'll go to McGill University in Canada and do, French Lit masters or something, and that didn't feel right, and kept trying things. And then just one day, it was almost like words spoken. I mean, it was so strong, said, go to law school. And I didn't know how to go to law school. I didn't know what law school was. I didn't know about entrance exams. I didn't know any lawyers or anything, like nothing. But that was, I think, so important, because I always knew that I was in the right place. I always knew I was in the right place. And with my job too, I just have this knowledge that I am in the right place doing the right thing. And I think it's interesting, right? For a Latter-day Saint woman to be teaching human rights and things that are seen as very liberal. And I think that when people meet me, I help them come over some of their biases or presumptions about LDS women, which is that they're very limited and they're not as educated and they're very conservative. And people always say, well, you're not a real, I mean, you're not like you're not a normal Mormon or whatever. And I just have had like every day the opportunity to influence students thinking, colleagues thinking, whether that's here in the United States or elsewhere. I've had colleagues around the world say, wow, you're the only Latter-day Saint I've ever met, and you're not what I expected. I've had opportunities because I invite my International Masters of Law students to my home, and we, I talk about, culture, and you can't learn law without culture. And, that in my family, we have a prayer before we eat, because I do a big meal. And so they're a part of that. And I invite them if they like to pray. Some guy from China prayed, some guy from Saudi Arabia, and just, sharing this ability to build these bridges. And I don't hide who I am. I never have. And my religion, my faith is part of who I am. And I just feel like I'm able to reach people who, with the gifts and the talents, the good and the bad, the Heavenly Father gave me, that other people wouldn't be able to. And then, so that's the faith part. And I would say for lesson learned, I would just encourage each person on here to define success for themselves. I was so focused, and that's part of my personality. Like I had to be the best. I don't know, I was so concerned about grades, which is fine, right? But about competing against myself. I didn't care how anybody else did, but it was against myself, right? And the biggest thing I've learned is that you can have a fabulous career regardless of grades or whatever, because Heavenly Father has a plan for each of us. And as Susanna said, yeah, we have to do our best in things, but the best isn't always getting the top grade. The best is whatever is your best. And Heavenly Father will, as you do your best, even if you have a breakdown and you don't do great one semester or whatever, because life is life, Heavenly Father will open doors for you. And He has a plan for you. I have, Susanna and I both have a friend, and she, I think her first year in law school, said, I do not want to ever practice law. I don't know why I'm here. I don't like the law. She didn't do well. She didn't really try, and she got through law school, but she's having a fabulous career as a diplomat. And she's like high up and she's doing awesome. And just that, like, define success for yourself. Don't say I have to have a top grade or I have to do this, but everybody is different, like so different. And do your best, whatever that means for you. Prepare yourself, like Susanna said, take opportunities, and then have faith. Have faith that God has a plan for you and a time for you, and that He will open those doors of opportunity as it's the time in your life for that.
Thank you, Rana. Very well said as well. Jenny, let's hear from you.
Sure. Simone, it's interesting that you said, you mentioned a motto, and actually I did think of a motto. I didn't know you were going to ask that question, but I do have a motto that I like to share this is from Richard L. Evans. And he said, it is a wonderful thing to be faithful, but a much greater thing to be both faithful and competent. And I just love that thought that, we want to be faithful, we're striving to be faithful, but how much good can we do if we're faithful and competent? And I think that's one of the biggest lessons for me is with my study of the law and the opportunities that have been given. I feel like if we are intentional in what we're doing, if I learn to be precise, and that's one thing I did learn, precise in my reading, precise in my study, precise the way I speak or present myself. If we do spend time in the study of the law, and then we step up to who we are, Heavenly Father is pushing us to be, then we can make a real difference in the world. And I think that there is a lot of truth in being called to the law, that if we feel that we have that calling, that this is what Heavenly Father wants us to do, and we'll put that time and that effort in to be competent, there's really no telling what, we can accomplish with His help. And I have found that over and over again as I stumble into the dark, as things have seemed hard sometimes where I wasn't sure I could do it, but I feel like He's led me to the next place, as long as I'm willing to do my part. And that's been a huge lesson for me. before I started back at the law, I was someone who was, a volunteer and, but, timid in a lot of ways. And I feel like I've just become someone I never would have been if I hadn't first gone to law school, second, been a lawyer. And I will never be able to express my gratitude for the places I've been led. And it's because of those decisions that I made. So I'm just really super grateful for my journey in the law.
Thank you for sharing that, Jenny. Candace, let's hear from you. What is something that you've learned and how your faith has influenced your career in the law?
Well, thanks. This is one of my favorite topics, and really something that I heard in a talk when I was in law school. And it's a wonderful talk by Elder Faust, who it was entitled A Message to My Granddaughters. And if you ever want to read an amazing talk, go back and read it. But sort of the message of that talk, besides encouraging women, his granddaughters, to have a career, to be prepared to work regardless of what they ended up doing, was that as a woman, you can do it all, but you do not have to do it all at once. There's a time and a season for everything. And as I was in law school, where I met my husband, got married halfway through my second year, and I was confronted with, do we start a family right away? Do I put my children on hold for my career? Do I work for 3 years, save up enough money for a mortgage for a house, or do I just start my family right away? All of those things were really challenging. But when I realized that, hey, there's a whole lifetime ahead of me, and I just need to decide sequentially when those things are going to happen, it brought me great peace. And as I started my family, I didn't look and think, oh, I'm not in court today, or I should be here, I should be doing this. I thought, this is my time to be a mom with my children, and everything's going to work out. I would not have started law school, but for some very spiritual experiences where it was very clear to me that I was supposed to go to law school. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't know how that's going to work out, given what else was going on in my life, but it did. And I ended up where I knew I needed to be. And I was very, very grateful for that. And I was grateful for the Spirit telling me what I was supposed to do next, because I have great imposter syndrome. And I don't know how many of you ever have imposter syndrome, but it's something where every so often I would think, wait, I'm not as smart as everyone else around me. What am I doing here? And someone's going to find out I don't really belong. But nevertheless, I have been led to many, many important opportunities in my life where I just had to go with faith and say, okay, if this is what you're telling me I'm supposed to do, this is where I'm going to be. And I know you're going to open the doors and make it work for me. And so, and it has. And I would say one of the most important things though I've learned along the way, both when I was working as a prosecutor, as I was working in a law firm, and in my political career, is be nice. Be nice to people, especially be nice to the people who help you, your staff, your secretaries, whoever is helping you accomplish your job. Oftentimes lawyers are dismissive. They think they're better than somebody else. Don't even go there. They will support you when you most need them. And to this day, as an elected official, county staff, my former city staff, they're always happy to help me because we have mutual respect for one another. It's not an act or anything else. So be a good, kind human being is really important. And then don't inhale. Don't start inhaling the compliments or the glory or whatever happens as you head on a partnership track or head on as an elected official. Keep in mind that you are humble, that you are a daughter of God, and all the people around you are children of God as well.
Thank you, Candace, for that great advice. I feel like I needed to hear that as well. And I feel like I really hope I can, in 15, 20 years, be in your shoes and just like each of you and be able to say, like, I feel so strongly that God has led me to where I am. And so really inspired by all of those responses. Thank you for sharing. And I want to end our panel discussion by sharing some of Annette's remarks on this same topic, specifically on her faith. She says, my faith is the center of who I am and the foundation on which I built how I practice law and indeed live my life. It's why I can do hard things and have fought for change in accommodating family needs in our profession. It has allowed me never to give a second thought to maintaining integrity and honesty in the way I practice law. It has allowed me to stand up for what I thought was right, even when I put my career at risk. It has prompted me to try to remember to treat everyone with respect, even in very heated and tough situations, and to try to understand another's point of view in resolving conflicts. It has spurred me to do pro bono work for both individuals and organizations in need, and to learn what we receive so much, and learn that we receive so much more than we ever give in service. It has been the reason I got involved in the JRCLS, an organization with an important purpose, and which is full of people I love and admire who have added so much to my life. It has given me many wonderful friendships with colleagues of many different faiths as we share a common belief in God and our love for our fellow human beings. Very beautifully said as well. So thank you to each of our panelists, speakers. It's been such a pleasure getting to hear from you, and I'm even more pumped to jump into the breakout rooms and get to know each of you a bit more. So we're going to start off with pre-assigned rooms. Like I said before, we have practice areas including government and litigation, estate planning, academia, politics, corporate and transactional law, immigration and nonprofit and family law, lots of different interests. So I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout rooms, and feel free to converse. This doesn't have to be formal. Feel free to introduce yourselves, say where you are located, if you're a law student, practicing attorney, whatever your role is. Let's get to know each other better. So I'm going to, if we're good to go, which I think we are, right, Katie?
Yeah, I just opened them.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main room. We're just going to close the event once we have everyone all back. We actually might have pretty much everyone back right now. I think it's been 60 seconds. So awesome. Well, I hope you all had a great time chatting with each other in the breakout rooms. We had hoped to do some more rounds, but with the timing and numbers, it worked out to just do one round. So we hope it was helpful, at least to just get to know people a little bit better. We, in the registration form, asked if you'd be willing to share contact information. And so for those of you who expressed that willingness to do so, we'll share each other's email and names and titles, so that afterwards you can continue to converse about everything we talked about today and get to know each other even better. So thank you again for joining. This has been so fun. I really love these opportunities to get to talk with really, I mean, women in the law is one thing, and then also LDS women in the law is another thing. It's really special to get to chat together. So thank you for coming. Katie, do you want to say any last parting words before we hop off?
I'll just echo what Simone said. It's so lovely to look into everyone's faces and to think about all that you're bringing to the table. Everyone is unique, and I loved hearing the variety of paths today. And I hope that our organization, LDS Women in Law, can support you wherever you're at in your journey with the law. I would just wanted to invite anyone who's interested in making connections or having questions answered. Feel free to direct message us on our Instagram. We love connecting people at various points in their careers with each other, so that we can kind of have these experiences on the micro level, even when we're not getting together all together. But thank you again, and good luck. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, I know that we're rooting for you.
Thank you, Katie. Candace, do you want to say our last words?
I just want to say it's just been so fun to be with all of you, to be inspired by each of you. I love looking at those of you who have babies in your arms, and you know what? That's who we are as women. We juggle, we make things happen, and we prioritize what's most important to us. I want to thank Simone, the hours that she has put into pulling together this amazing program, bringing our two organizations together for this opportunity to share. A big hand of applause for Simone. Really, it was just fabulous. And we will have this recording available on the J. Reuben Clark Law Society if someone wants to go back and review it or share it with a friend. We do have Jennifer Long, who's going to be writing an article about it as well. And thank you all. And as was mentioned in our small group, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the panel. We're always happy to talk to you about your careers, about whether you want to go to law school or not, or finding that balance that you're trying to achieve, and wishing you all the very best.
Thank you so much, Candace. Thank you for your kind words. That's so sweet. I feel the exact same. So thank you so much to everyone. Thank you so much to all the speakers as well. And yeah, we'll all be in touch. We'll keep in contact. Have a great evening to you all, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.